Jim always dreamed of a stable and happy life. Raised in a small town, he valued family and hard work, taking pride in his modest home. He pursued a career in engineering, driven by a passion for problem-solving and building a secure future. His life changed when he met Linda at a community event. They quickly connected and decided to start a family, sharing dreams of raising their children in a nurturing environment. However, Jim's idyllic life began to unravel. Subtle changes in Linda's behavior, late nights at work, and growing distance caused doubt and anxiety in Jim. Despite his efforts to fix their relationship, Linda's disinterest only widened the gap. The unresolved conflicts became unbearable, leading to a devastating end to their marriage. Jim felt utterly defeated, his planned life shattered. Despair consumed him as he grappled with the betrayal. He left Morrison's restaurant, returned to the hotel, collected his things but left hers, and checked out, heading home. At home, silence greeted him. He cried in the living room, thinking of his children, sinking deeper into despair. He drank from a half-empty bottle of Chivas Regal, then threw it into the fireplace, breaking their wedding photo. Enough of this, he said. He decided revenge was his only option. Jim transferred their savings into his checking account, took $2,500 and left the rest. He wrote letters to his mother and her parents, detailing the events and his departure, and prepared messages for news outlets. He wrote letters to Emma and Tommy for their 18th birthdays, hoping Linda would acknowledge the truth. Jim packed a gym bag, showered, dressed, and prepared to leave. He wrote a note for Linda. "Goodbye, live without me, and let it be painful." Guess who? He threw his wedding ring on the table. In his office, he took his Colt Python, ammunition, passport, extra cash, and marriage certificate. He tore the certificate, pinned it to the wall with a knife, and decorated it with ketchup. He made coffee, filled the reservoir with water, and sabotaged the fridge and freezer. Satisfied, he gathered his things and headed to the garage, ready to leave his old life behind. He opened the garage door and went to his weapons safe. She never allowed a weapons safe in the house, said it was disgusting and dangerous, didn't fit the decor. He took out his Winchester pump-action rifle, a Weatherby 30-06 rifle, and all his ammo. He locked the safe, then grabbed a sleeping bag, two-person tent, ground cloth, and fishing gear. He loaded everything into his F-150, secured 2 5-gallon jerry cans in the bed, and closed it. Thinking about his children, he groaned and leaned on the truck. Was this the right decision? He didn't know. This torment would haunt him for years. He got into the car, threw the house keys on the garage floor, and drove away without locking anything. He glanced at his Stour DeVolta watch, a Father's Day gift from Linda and the kids. "For the man who gives everything and expects nothing in return," she had said. It was 1:30 a.m. He drove to L.W. Stern's office, an old family friend who considered Jim a second son. He parked on the street and set his alarm for 8 a.m. 6 hours later. The alarm woke him. He stretched, yawned, and finished his cold coffee. He called L.W., knowing it was early but needing to move quickly. "Hello?" L.W., his calm voice answered. Jim said, "L.W., I need your help. Can you come to the office and bring a notary? I'll explain everything when I see you." L.W. asked, "Is Linda okay?" Jim replied, "Not on the phone. Please, for my sake." "Okay, son. Give me an hour. Don't do anything stupid," L.W. advised. "Thank you, sir," Jim said, ending the call. 50 minutes later, L.W. arrived. They shook hands and entered the office building. After a short elevator ride, they reached L.W.'s office. L.W. made coffee and checked his voicemail while Jim sat down. L.W. asked, "Okay, son. What's going on?" Jim explained everything from the weekend to the morning call. By the end, he was angry but composed, thinking about his children. L.W. listened, taking notes. Finally, he sighed, squeezed his temples, and leaned forward. "Son, you were blindsided. What do you want to do?" Jim stared at him and said, "I want to eliminate them both, but they're not worth it. I want to leave just like she did to me." "Leave? Abandon her and the kids just like she did to you?" L.W. asked. Jim said, yes, just leave, chuckling for the first time since the night before. LW brought Jim back to reality. What about the children? Are they even mine? Should I care for them when she doesn't? She only thought about herself. Well, I think about myself too, to hell with her. Yes, I should have shown compassion, but not now. Will you help me? Can I just walk away and forget about her? It's not illegal, right? I left her over $15,000 and didn't take anything else. Not even my tools. I canceled all utilities, cable, and insurance. I want my 401k and pension to go toward the kids' education. Put it all in trust for them. I'll give you power of attorney over me. Can we do that? LW sighed and sat back. He had never seen anyone as destroyed as Jim. This frightened him more than his 2 tours in Vietnam or watching his wife die from cancer. Yes, we can do it. She might file for divorce, but she'll have to find you. Or she may publish that you abandoned her and the kids. Your children will suffer and your mother will be devastated. Is this what you want, Jim? What about a consultation? Jim's look said it all. Why, so she can beg me to forget it? To hear her say it was only sex, it didn't mean anything? No. Let her deal with the consequences. Consequences? Yes, LW, consequences, just like I had to. Is this what I really want? What I want is for this nightmare to be a dream. But it's not. I'm not going to sit in a room with her and a psychologist telling me to forgive her. She did it. Let her face it. LW thought and realized he couldn't change Jim's mind. Tears formed in his eyes as he listened. Jim took a deep breath, and LW straightened up, picking up a pencil. At this moment, Penny Wilson, his assistant and notary, walked in. Seeing the tense conversation, she hesitated, but LW beckoned her in. He introduced Jim and explained they needed documents notarized. She nodded and got her tablet and coffee. We sat down and Penny was brought up to speed. She didn't show judgment, but it was clear she didn't have good feelings about the situation. We drafted the separation agreement and power of attorney for LW, signing and notarizing all documents. Trusts were set up with my mother and LW as administrators. I handed LW the letters for my kids and shook hands with everyone, receiving a somber, "So sorry," from Penny. Why did I feel so little sorrow? My life ended a day after its actual end. I left, and the day didn't seem so gloomy. Still cloudy and sad, but not catastrophically terrible. I can't understand why. I went to the bank, withdrew money from the savings account, and closed it, leaving the principal in the checking account. I went to my truck, filled the tank, the extra tank, and 2 5-gallon jerry cans. Then I went to an internet cafe. I ordered coffee and a muffin, uploaded files to everyone on the list, her parents, my mom, TV stations, and local newspapers. I then went to the NFL Players Association and canceled all our credit cards, reporting them stolen. I finished my coffee and left. The weather began to clear up. March in Cicero is cold, gloomy, and dark, much like my outlook on life. It was a little after 2 p.m. when I headed east, driving for about 7 hours. I stopped at a nondescript motel and got a room. I woke up early, unable to sleep, and drove for 6 more hours, ending up in Golden Beach, Maryland, by the Patuxent River. Felt like a summer town, but in early March there wasn't much to do. I parked in front of a small restaurant called Sally's and went inside. I needed to change direction as the road was ending. I grabbed my road atlas and walked in. It wasn't crowded, just a few people and a large corkboard with local ads. One ad caught my eye. A studio apartment for rent, $135 per month, utilities and internet included, no smoking or drinking allowed. I took the ad and sat at the counter. An older woman, Sally, greeted me warmly. Sally said, "Hello, dear. What can I get you?" I asked, "Can you tell me about this ad?" She assessed me without looking at the ad and finally spoke. "Looking for a room and maybe work?" "Yes and yes," I replied. She nodded, called someone on her cell, and then said, "Hey May, I have an interesting candidate here you might want to talk to." "Yes, he looks decent." "Okay, see you soon." She put her phone away. "Are you hungry? How about a late lunch?" "Sure, a roast beef sandwich, Salad with ranch dressing and sweet tea, I said. Sally smiled and went to prepare my lunch. I wondered how things would work out. The lunch was great and I was finishing my coleslaw when the doors swung open. A woman around 40-45 years old and a man about 62-67 walked in. The man, tall and rugged, looked like a Marine Corps poster. He guided the woman to a seat beside me, then sat on my other side, removing his sunglasses and cap. Sarcastically, I said, "Please take a seat." Noting the empty seats and tables, these two seemed to be my interviewers. The man's gaze was intense, but I didn't flinch. Then the woman spoke. "Hello, I'm May Lowell and this is my husband Joshua." "Say hello, Joshua," she said. He studied me silently. May extended her hand and I shook it. May asked, "What's your name? Where are you from and why are you here?" I took out my driver's license and introduced myself, giving a brief summary of my situation without details. May pressed further. "Are you married?" she inquired. Reluctantly, I replied, "Yes, ma'am." "And you have children?" May continued. "Yes, ma'am." I hesitated. "Where are they?" she asked. "I don't know and I'm not interested. Look, I didn't do anything illegal, maybe it's morally questionable, but I don't care. You have my driver's license. Check me out if you want. But if that's the case, I'm leaving. I don't need this. I'm a man of my word, maybe not of honor, but I've survived too much," I said firmly. May started. "Actually, listen, Jim, I just want—" A voice behind me, strong and commanding, interrupted. "That's enough, May." I turned to Joshua. His eyes had changed. He was now looking at me, not through me. May stopped talking and something clicked in her head. Joshua then began to speak and I turned my attention to him. "Rent is $150 a month, cash, payable monthly. This is the last available apartment on our property. The rent increased because spring is coming and demand will rise. I'm a man of my word and honor. The rent stays $150 as long as you're here. If you're interested, follow us to the house. Take a look and we'll shake hands." I raised my eyebrows. "Shall we shake hands?" I asked. "Yes, a man of his word," he replied. After a moment, I nodded. "Okay, let's go." I waved for the bill and Sally handed me a slip. $5.12, including tax, she said with a smile. I placed $11 on the counter. "Big tip, thank you," she said, nodding to the Lowells as she took the money. We left and Joshua greeted two sheriff's deputies on their coffee break. He pointed to a black Rubicon Sahara with big tires and a winch. "Follow us," he said, helping Mai into the vehicle. He smiled at her before shutting the door, then turned to me, his expression serious again. He climbed into the car and drove off. I quickly followed in my truck. After a 12-minute drive, he turned towards the river and entered a secluded driveway leading to 10 bungalows on stilts, ending at the Marina Hideaway. The last blue house on the right with white shutters was where they stopped. I parked in the designated spot and approached the Lowells. The cottage was elevated, with a staircase and a ramp leading up to a small veranda. The ramp was well built, anchored in concrete with anti-slip coverings. I walked up the ramp to meet them, and they invited me inside. The interior had a small hallway opening to a kitchen on one side and a bathroom with a shower on the other. The bedroom overlooked the river, and the living room faced the hills and forest. There were ceiling fans and a small, wood-burning fireplace, but no other heating or cooling devices. The place was cozy and well-insulated, about 1,200 square feet, perfect for a romantic weekend. Jim turned to the Lowells and said, "I'll take it." Joshua responded, "Not so fast. How will you pay for it? Do you have a job?" "Not yet, sir." "What are you offering?" Jim asked. Joshua assessed him again, then looked at May and back to Jim. "Maybe. What can you do?" "I'm a licensed aircraft mechanic and good with woodwork and driving a forklift," Jim replied. Joshua's appraisal increased. "Okay, how about minimum wage in cash? Unofficially working at Hideaway Marina. Wear branded t-shirts with jeans. Local churches and charities might need help occasionally. Cooperate with them individually in cash. Don't take advantage of their kindness or you'll be out. Understood. Jim smiled and said, loud and clear, boss. Joshua nodded and instructed. Tomorrow morning, bright and early. Breakfast is at 6 in the restaurant in the long building. Come half an hour early and you can buy breakfast. Let's see what you can do. He extended his hand. Agreed, Jim said, shaking his hand. Thus began their adventure. Over time, Jim learned their story and became known to them. Joshua was a Marine scout in Vietnam who rescued May and her family. They were taken to the Philippines and then to the United States through Catholic charities. Joshua, fascinated by May, kept track of her and eventually proposed in Oceanside, California. He converted to Catholicism, which pleased her family but not his own. After their wedding and a short honeymoon, they moved to Paris Island against her family's wishes. Joshua had 2 overseas deployments and retired as an infantry sergeant major with many honors. They had 4 children, 3 joined the Marines and 1 the Air Force. Their daughter, after serving in the Marines and graduating from the Naval Academy, became a lawyer and started a relationship with a pediatrician from Baltimore. Jim continued his work, toughening himself mentally and physically. He enjoyed the better weather and honed his woodworking and mechanical skills. He became well-liked in town and with his new boss, eventually getting officially hired and promoted. He started a small business, hiring 2 young men, one an ex-convict and the other a veteran, to renovate and build home additions. Jim was accepted by the Lowell's children and became a semi-official family member. 2.5 years later, Jim was settled, earning almost $20 an hour. He shared his story with the Lowells, shocking May. How could a woman do such a thing? She has children, May said. But this means you have children, and I care about them, but I'm not sure if they are my biological children. It would mean believing a traitor. I'm still not over it. Joshua observed quietly, adding, You're broken, young man. I don't judge your choice, but you're at a dead end. May continued, You chose a path and followed it. But you're broken and not doing anything to fix yourself. Jim realized he was accepted into their family but still broken. He had no social life outside the Lowells and a few church friends. Linda had made him a recluse, a selfish woman who prioritized her desires over her family. Jim thought deeply about his decision to leave, still struggling with it. He began to move past the nightmare, burying the hatred. 3 years later, he felt trapped by his inaction, but ready for change. One Sunday morning, leaving a grocery store, he saw 2 men trying to rob a young woman by her Toyota Supra. She screamed and struggled, but the location and time of day drew no attention. Jim intervened, inserting himself into the situation. I placed my grocery bags on the truck hood, rushed across the parking lot, pulled out my ASP and opened it. Shouting to get their attention, I approached the attackers. One had a weapon, but I was already in action. I struck his wrist with the baton, hearing a sickening crack. I threw him into the other guy, pinning them both against the Supra. The first one screamed, and the second one groaned from broken ribs as they slid to the ground. I turned to face a petite woman, about 5 feet 3 inches, with long brown hair and a ponytail and librarian-style glasses. She was trying to open the car's back door, screaming. I dialed Mike Lowell, the Lowell's second son. Mike, I have a situation at the grocery store. Possible robbery, assault, and kidnapping. Don't go. We're on our way. I ensured the attacker stayed put, then walked to the woman. I carefully opened the car door, and she pulled out a small girl, about 4 or 5. Are you okay? I asked. She cried but calmed down and thanked me. They wanted to take my car and my child. That won't happen, I assured her. Are you a policeman? She asked. I laughed, feeling my sense of humor return. No, but I play one on TV. She looked wary just as police cars arrived, sirens blaring. Mike and his partner jumped out, weapons drawn. I raised my hands, holding the weapon by the barrel. Mike took it for evidence. What happened, Jim? I gave a quick rundown, then apologized for my joke. I introduced myself. Sorry for the comment, my name is Jim Carlisle. Are you and the baby okay? She seemed unsure of my sincerity. Paramedics arrived and checked on the woman, and her daughter who were in shock but otherwise fine. The woman looked at Mike. "Do you know this guy?" "Yes, he works for my father and lives near the marina." "He's a good guy," Mike replied. She turned to me. "Thanks again. My name is Emma Lindell." I was stunned, thinking of my daughter. Mike, not realizing the name similarity, asked Emma, "Is Linda okay?" I staggered and hit her car. Mike supported me, then shook me. "Pull yourself together, Jim. These aren't your girls," he explained to Emma. Jim's ex-wife was named Linda and his daughter's name is Emma. He's had a rough past but is a good man. I was touched by Mike's words. I straightened up, embarrassed. Stuttering, I began to apologize and tried to leave. Emma stopped me. "Jim, Mr. Carlisle, it's fine. Just take a deep breath and relax." I calmed down and Mike stepped away. A police officer approached for our statements and personal information. Little Linda looked at me curiously, probably thinking I had two heads. Finally, Emma asked if I wanted to have lunch. "Have you been to Sally's?" she suggested. Mike watched my reaction, and when I blushed and said it was one of my favorite places, he grinned widely. "Go have lunch, Jim. Take your time," he said, leaving with a smile. I turned to Emma, who was studying me. "Well, what do you say? I'm a little hungry and my daughter is probably starving too. And since you're a man, you're probably hungry as well. Let's go, my treat. It's the least I can do to thank you." I hadn't felt this way in over 3 years, but I agreed. We walked to Sally's after I secured the groceries in my truck. Inside, Sally waved us to an empty table. "Are you two going to ask for a hero discount?" Sally teased. Emma giggled. "News travels fast." "Huh, Sally?" Mike talked about the incident on the radio. "Well done, Jim. I knew you were a good guy the first time I saw you," Sally said, enjoying herself. 2 elderly gentlemen came in and approached our table. "How are you, Sal? Is the pie fresh?" asked the first one. "I just took 2 apple and 1 peach pie out of the oven." "Choose, Rufus." Rufus laughed, took off his Vietnam veteran cap and extended his hand to me. "Well done, young man. It's good to see the younger generation stepping up." I heard he had a weapon. I shook his hand, feeling a warm handshake. The second man also shook my hand, praising Joshua's sense of character. They nodded to Emma and her daughter, smiling briefly, then headed to the counter. Sally was delighted with the attention. "Looks like you two will be the talk of the town," she said. Emma laughed. "Can we get dinner, Sally, before his head gets too bloated?" I was embarrassed and apologized. Sally suggested grilled chicken, fries, spinach, and a side salad. It was the Tuesday special. Even though it was after 2:30 p.m., Emma agreed, adding mac and cheese and nuggets for her daughter. It was the first time I saw the child smile. Sally left to place our order and Emma continued. She revealed that Mike's sister and his wife had been trying to set us up, hoping it would help my recovery. Emma, however, was only focused on her child and not interested in a romantic relationship. "I'm 29 years old, divorced for 3 years. My abusive husband died in prison last year. I was one of Mike's sister's first cases after she opened her practice," she explained, lowering her voice to avoid upsetting her daughter. "I'm an accountant, licensed in estate planning and certified in investments. I run a small company with my best friend and a notary secretary. We've been doing well for over 3 years. I was surprised when those thugs tried to rob or kidnap us." Emma started to cry, the adrenaline wearing off and the reality setting in. I walked around, crouched down and hugged her. Little Linda began to cry too, so I hugged her as well. For the first time in over 3 years, I felt normal and whole again, even though it scared me. I looked at the sweet woman and the little girl sobbing in our embrace, not wanting it to end. Sally approached, concerned. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't smiling. She set iced tea and apple juice on the table as I tried to explain, but Emma interrupted, saying it was an emotional outburst due to the day's events. Sally relented and I sat back down, moving closer to Emma and her daughter. Sally winked as she walked away. I straightened my shirt, took a sip of iced tea, and looked at Emma. "Okay, my turn. Sorry for my reaction earlier. When you introduced yourself and your daughter, their names being the same as my wife and daughter's threw me off. I apologize. I told her my story, avoiding the gory details, but making it clear that Linda had cheated and abandoned me. I explained I wasn't proud of what I'd done but saw no other way out. Could I have done things differently? Probably, but it wouldn't have changed anything. As I spoke, I felt a burden lift. Emma listened carefully, her eyes widening and hardening as she processed my story. She was a neutral party, which helped. She seemed to understand my devastation and the steps I took afterward. Emma then said, "I'm not like your Linda. I understand what you went through, but you need to recover. Trust me, I know. I've been through something similar. We might see each other again someday." Dinner arrived and we enjoyed our meal, chatting about life in Golden Beach. Emma had lived here for over 4 years since her husband's arrest. Her daughter Linda was just over 5 years old. We finished dinner and Emma thanked me again, collecting her things. She shook my hand, holding it a little longer than necessary, then left, leaving me with the bill. I smiled. Sally came over, smiling. "Don't ruin it, honey. She's a real find and worth the wait." I paid and went home feeling better than I had in a long time. Weeks turned into months and I ran into Emma several times, even inviting her and Linda out for ice cream. I was becoming human again. The next morning, I showed up for breakfast at the Marina restaurant. We launched and serviced 2 small boats. On Thursday, I was informed about a barbecue at the Lowell's house on Friday, and my presence was welcome. It looked like I'd be having a barbecue on Friday. It was good that it wasn't Lent. I decided to take a nap on Saturday after a night of drinking on Friday. Sounds good, right? On Friday I woke up, had breakfast and got ready for the day. The families who owned the boats arrived and I showed them the work we had done, explained our hours, the fuel station and more. These were weekend regulars but not locals. After everything was settled, I left work, cleaned up, changed into a clean t-shirt and jeans and headed to the Lowell's house for the barbecue. The Lowell home was a spacious log-style ranch with a wraparound deck, patio, jacuzzi, pool, fire pit, and smoking barbecue. Mike greeted me with a hug and kiss on the cheek, then threw me into the mix of a typical family gathering. Children and spouses mingled and Mai's daughter, Angelina, soon singled me out. She was a prominent attorney, a Marine Corps veteran and very close to a young doctor. "Jim, how are you? I've only met you a few times in the last 3 years, but I've heard good things about you. Can we talk?" she asked. "Okay, sure," I replied, a bit taken aback. She smiled and took my hand. We were joined by Mike and his wife Camille, who smiled at my obvious embarrassment and anxiety. They led me to a small table under a shady tree. We sat down and I received hugs, handshakes, and a bottle of Budweiser. "Why do women always choose wine?" Mike joked, handing me the beer. "Budweiser, but not too much. Okay?" I took a sip and Angelina began. "I was given a mission about a year and a half ago." "Well, she's a Marine," I thought, looking for Joshua, who was talking to Emma and occasionally glancing at me. "Listen carefully, soldier," Angelina continued. "I was tasked with finding out your situation. I contacted your lawyer, Lavard Stearns. Don't worry. No one knows where you are. We know much more now. Stearns confirmed everything you told us. He never asked where you were or if you were coming back. I also asked about the situation back in Cicero, Illinois. I'm the only one who knows about this. Even my parents don't know yet." Just then, her young friend Robert approached, kissed her on the head and said, "Everything okay, dear?" "Yes, I'm just starting my report. Come back in a while," she replied with a smile. Robert smiled and left. Angelina turned back to me. "So, like I said, I'm the only one who knows. I'll tell you everything here because we're all family, and whether you like it or not, you are too. Ready?" My stomach churned and I struggled to breathe. Mike stood up, told me to drink, and brought 2 more Budweisers and a bottle of iced tea. "I think you've had enough booze. Stay hydrated. And I haven't even heard the story yet," he said, grinning. "I need to know. How bad can it be?" "I'm not in prison yet, so let's find out," I said, turning to Angelina. She kept smiling, clearly enjoying herself. "When she returned home, she planned to make you regret leaving and hoped to get you back. She panicked and called emergency, thinking you had eliminated yourself. She kept screaming about the smell. The police told her to wait for help, but she hung up and called her parents. When the police arrived, they found her screaming about blood and the smell. They put her in a squad car while they investigated. About 20 minutes later, they came out, visibly disgusted, and one officer taped the door shut. Angie was delighted, barely containing her laughter. "Jim, you really outdid yourself." The police were annoyed and puzzled. Her parents arrived and the circus began. Your emails and messages spread, and they were overwhelmed with calls. News crews started arriving. "Well done, Jim." Mike and Camille looked at me in shock. Mike managed a wow. Angie continued. The police told her off for wasting their time and left. Her parents took her inside, opened windows to air out the place, and scolded her for the mess. They got the whole story from her. Her mother was shocked, her father furious at both of you. He eventually told her to file for divorce. She delayed for months, spent the money you left, and finally, 2 years later, the divorce was final. You've been free for 6 months. She drowned in debt, lost the house, her job, and started drinking. Her parents got custody of the kids. Your mother sees them often, but Linda doesn't. Last week she went into rehab. Her parents are exhausted, her mother's health is failing, and her father's blood pressure is rising. The mood grew somber. Joshua and Mai joined us, and Joshua continued. Your family knows everything now. Mai and I don't know much. It's up to you to decide what to share. His emphasis was clear. It's up to you. You've put this off long enough. Others are involved and some want to be involved. Emma joined us standing nearby. I wondered how they hadn't found me. I re-registered my truck, changed my driver's license, and I'm on the payroll here. I even paid my taxes last year. Mike blushed. I helped with that. When you changed your truck registration and driver's license, I pulled some strings at the DMV. The forms were lost and not reviewed. He looked at his feet. Angie added, LV filed your taxes the first 2 years. You owe him a bit for taxes. Last year, he let you do it yourself so no one noticed. Not the government, your in-laws, or the police. Maybe your mom. She's angry and misses your dad. Emma squeezed my shoulder. I looked into her gray eyes and smiled. I shuddered, realizing I was a free man, supported by people who cared. I needed space to think things through. Stop running, son. That time has passed, Joshua said firmly. I smiled. You're right, no more running. I addressed everyone. It's time to get our act together. I looked at Emma and pointed toward the river. Can someone watch Linda while we take a walk? Camille stood up. Don't worry, Emma. She'll be fine. Emma thanked Camille and Mike, took my hand and led me away. Angelina shook my hand, hugged me, and then began briefing her parents on the recent events. Emma and I walked along a path through the forest, eventually finding a comfortable spot by a fallen tree near the river. She sat gracefully and patted the spot next to her, saying, sit down. I sat, avoiding eye contact, focusing on the surroundings. Emma closed her eyes, smiling and breathing deeply. Her calm demeanor reassured me. After collecting my thoughts, I turned to her. Emma, you need to know everything about me. I need to tell you my whole story. Okay, I'm listening, she said, opening her eyes and looking at me. I sighed and began. I told her how my life was ruined by a heartless woman, my decisions, right or wrong, and how I struggled for the last 3 years. I shared everything Angie had told us and some personal details. I explained how saving her and Linda had affected me and how her presence had helped me. When I finished, I was on edge, unsure of my plan. Emma looked at me with admiration and giggled. So, if I'm not mistaken, you want to make me an honest woman. You've been nothing but honorable. I'm impressed with your determination and character, she said, glowing with admiration and a hint of passion. I was a bit shocked and embarrassed but took her hands in mine. She held my gaze, waiting. I swallowed and began. I want to ask Angelina to contact LW in Illinois to see if I can get custody of my children. Considering her situation, it can't be worse than hers. Then I want to move them here with my mom. But first, I need to build a house big enough for all of us. Emma blinked, taken aback. For once, I was ahead of her. So, do you have feelings for me? She asked. I replied, yeah, I think so. And you think Linda and I can be part of your family? She continued. I smiled and said, yes, I'm pretty sure I love you, or at least I really like you, and I think it could turn into love if we let it happen. Then I leaned in and kissed her. A gentle, sincere kiss. She turned it into a proposal right there, saying, I am yours and you are mine. Period. She took control. I know a respected artist and architect who can draw up the plans and file permits for a nominal fee, thanks to his wife being a close friend of mine. Meanwhile, Angelina will contact Elle to resolve the custody issue. You might have some legal expenses, but we'll discuss that later. What do you say? She smiled like a Cheshire cat. I rushed to her and she screamed with joy as we tumbled into the leaves behind the log. After 45 minutes of laughter and kisses, we returned to the party, still brushing off leaves and grass. Joshua and Mia now knew everything. We shared our plans and they supported us. Angie was officially hired as my lawyer at a family discount and would contact LW on Monday to start the process. I discussed with Joshua buying a lot to build a house with an addition for my mom, connected by a covered walkway. The house would have 5 bedrooms. I offered to rent my current place to Linda's parents if they wanted to live here with their grandchildren. I wasn't sure how they felt about me, but decided to see what happened. Emma and I sat with the architect, discussed our needs, and he suggested ideas, showing us plans on his laptop and giving an estimate. On Monday, I applied for a construction loan at the bank. Angie contacted LW to discuss my case. He said I'd likely need to return to handle it. I had almost 4 weeks of vacation saved up, and Joshua told me to take whatever time I needed. Family, he said. Angie came up with a unique angle for my case and discussed it with LW via Skype and email. Emma and I continued our relationship, and Linda grew closer to me, holding my hand and seeking goodnight kisses and hugs. Her mother and I grew closer too, though not physically yet. When are you going to propose to my mom? I need a dad, and you fit the role, don't you think? Linda asked, surprising me. The court case wasn't as bad as I feared. I hadn't done anything illegal, just questionable. Her parents supported my plans, and when LW and Angie told them about my offer to move in, they were eager to talk and apologize. Everything moved forward. My small business doing odd jobs and home renovations expanded to 2 teams. My home became a source of pride. Within 2 months, the structure was ready, and Emma, Linda, May, Angelina, Camilla, and Sally helped decorate. I received a court date for family court. Linda struggled after rehab, and LW began selling the house before it was auctioned. I packed my truck, kissed Emma goodbye, hugged the others, and headed to Cicero. Angie said she would fly out soon for the trial. Returning home after almost 4 years felt strange. My neighborhood hadn't changed much, but my house looked neglected. The grass was overgrown, paths untidy, 1 garage door dented, another painted, and a window covered with plywood. I drove by slowly on my way to my mom's apartment, eager to see her and apologize for the worries I'd caused. There was no need to worry. Mom met me at the door as I carried my bag in. She hugged me, kissing my cheek and any exposed skin, her tears making me feel guilty. I apologized, but her smile made everything better. She pulled me inside, took my things to the guest room, and brought coffee. She said LW would arrive soon and we could all talk. She just wanted to hug me. 2 hours later, LW arrived with Penny Wilson. He hugged my mom and introduced me to Penny. We got down to business. Angie was arriving Friday and the trial started Monday. LW said the judge was strict but fair, disliking betrayal but also disapproving of fathers who abandon their families. He discussed Linda's lawyer and their likely tactics. No custody, no child support, no spousal support. LW was confident, though I felt they were holding something back. On Friday, I drove to O'Hare to meet Angie, who greeted me with a smile. You said yes, I teased. She laughed, and I realized how much I missed moments like this. We went to my mom's house, and Angie was warmly welcomed. The next day, we went to LW's office and met with him and Penny. After coffee, we reviewed everything, and Angie updated us on her findings. Despite feeling like something was missing, they assured me all was fine. Angie said I was in good shape for the trial set to begin Monday. I felt nervous but hopeful, praying and promising to go to church. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep, praying and worrying until I finally dozed off. I woke up early, attended morning mass, and spent the day reflecting and praying. I returned home to a worried mom and assured her I just needed time alone. I felt more at peace. After a simple dinner, I went to bed, feeling as prepared as possible. Monday arrived cool and clear. The trial was set to start at 9 a.m. I arrived early, found room 319 and greeted LV, Angie, and Penny. Then I saw Linda looking worn and tired, accompanied by 2 lawyers and our daughters, Dee and Jane. She initially didn't notice me but then spotted our group. She looked terrible, gaunt and wrinkled, and makeup didn't help. I felt a bit smug, knowing I was in good shape after years of hard work and healthy living. She tried to approach me, but her companions restrained her and let her into the courtroom. Angie approached me. "She looks bad, Jim." "Yes," I replied. "It's a pity." "Huh?" My response surprised Angie, but she eventually understood. We were about to enter when the elevator doors opened again, and there they were, my mom and Linda's parents. They walked up and my mom hugged me, followed by Linda's mom. Then her dad extended his hand to me. "Okay," I stuttered, then said, "Linda just went in." Her mom made my day by saying, "That's good, but we're here for you." Her father added, "She had her chance. Now it's your turn, just be polite." I gave him a bear hug. "Thank you, Dad." We entered the courtroom, sat at the plaintiff's table, and Linda's parents sat behind me. There were a few other people, including 2 bored-looking reporters. Linda's entourage exchanged glances with us. At 9:05, the bailiff announced, "Hear, hear, all rise for the Honorable Thomas Kincaid, Family Court Judge. The court is now in session. Case 213, James R. Carlisle versus Linda Kramer for the custody of 2 minors, Emma Louise Carlisle, 12, and Thomas James Carlisle, 9. Child and spousal support are also in question. Please sit down." The judge took his seat, knocked the gavel once, and said, "Thank you, bailiff. Are the interested parties present?" Linda's lawyer stood up and said, "Linda Kramer, defendant." "Your Honor, I'm John Schultz representing Ms. Kramer." Louis W. Stearns stood and said, "Louis W. Stearns for the plaintiff, James Carlisle, Your Honor." The judge looked at Linda and said, "This seems straightforward. Kramer, your ex-husband is suing for custody of your 2 children and to move them out of state. Is this true?" Linda stood up and replied, "Yes, Your Honor. He thinks I'm an unfit mother and wants to take my children away." The judge asked, "It's clear you 2 are divorced, right?" Linda responded, "Yes, Your Honor." The judge continued, "May I ask why you got divorced?" I almost jumped out of my seat, but LV grabbed my hand and muttered, "Not yet." Linda sobbed. "We were celebrating with friends at Morrison's. Jim and I argued and he—" LV shot up and said, "Object, Your Honor." The judge asked, "On what basis?" LV responded, "Ms. Kramer is lying." Schultz stood up and said, "Your Honor, there's no need to attack my client's reputation. This is irrelevant." The judge thought for a moment and then said, "Objection sustained, but I'm curious. Ms. Kramer, what really happened?" Linda paled and looked around, panicking. I can't. It's not what you think." Her lawyer stood up again and said, "Your Honor, there is no basis to raise the issue of sexual impropriety. It's irrelevant." LV grinned. The judge raised an eyebrow and said, "Sexual misconduct?" "Yes, Your Honor." Schultz replied. The judge turned to Linda and said, "Ms. Kramer, explain." Linda shrank, unable to speak. The judge turned to LV and asked, "Can Mr. Carlisle tell us what happened, Mr. Stearns?" LV nodded and said, "Swear him in, Your Honor. He'll tell the truth." Schultz shouted, "Objection. This is a biased account." Objection overruled. "Bailiff," the judge ordered. The bailiff approached with a Bible and said, "Put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I swear," I said. The bailiff continued, "State your name and address for the record." "James Carlisle, Hideaway Marina, Golden Beach, Maryland." I responded. "Thank you," the bailiff said. The judge turned to me and asked, "Mr. Carlisle, what happened that night?" I told the judge everything from the moment we left home to when Linda went to the ladies' room and didn't return. Holding Linda's gaze, I continued. She left me without a word. For another man, Mark Levalier. No discussion, no explanation. So I went home and left her, just like she did to me. I'm not proud of what I did, but I felt I had no choice, just like she did. I hesitated. At least I left her a note. The silence was broken only by Linda's sobs. Then she exploded. You left me and our children, you scoundrel. I retorted sharply. Just like you did. Linda. The judge banged his gavel twice. Order or I'll take measures against both of you. Her lawyer was furious, not wanting this discussed. The judge leaned forward and said, Miss Kramer, is Mr. Carlyle's story true? Answer honestly. Linda, devastated, sighed heavily and under the judge's stern gaze, admitted, yes, sir. Everything he said is true. I ruined everything. The judge turned to me, Mr. Carlyle, I sympathize with your stress, but you left your family for almost 4 years. That's not good. I was seething when Angie stood up, grabbed my arm and pulled me to her seat. She addressed the judge, Your Honor, may I speak for Mr. Carlyle? Who are you? Asked the judge. Maya Angelina Lowell, Mr. Carlyle's lawyer from Maryland. You should meet some people. Joshua Lowell leaned forward, Your Honor, may I? Go ahead, Mr. Lowell. He straightened up and looked me in the eye. Your Honor, when we met James Carlyle, he was broken and defeated, but he didn't give up. He took an interest in one of our cabins. I took a chance on him and he has improved significantly. Joseph added, I haven't known Jim as long, but I agree with my dad. Jim is a decent guy. Joshua Jr. continued, Your Honor, I also agree. From what I've seen, Jim is a good man. He would make a good infantryman or marine. Mike spoke next, Your Honor, my wife and I have known Jim for 4 years. We trust him with our family's safety. My kids call him Uncle Jim. He became a hero in Golden Beach, saving a woman and her daughter from a robbery and carjacking at great personal risk. Sally spoke last. Jim walked into my restaurant a broken man. I knew he needed help. Now I know he's a wonderful man who's made great strides. I consider him a surrogate grandson. She turned to my mom, Mrs., you've done an excellent job raising him. Angie continued as the doors opened. There is one more person who would like to speak. Emma Lindell stepped forward. I stood up, walked over, and stopped as she smiled. Addressing the judge, she said, Your Honor, may I speak for this man? Linda turned pale, glaring at Emma. Yes, please, who are you? I am the woman Jim saved from muggers in Golden Beach, Maryland. Me and my daughter Linda. The judge struck his gavel once for order. Please continue, Miss Lindell. I've known James Carlyle for about 1.5 years. He is a wonderful, honorable man. Her gaze slid toward Linda with barely noticeable hostility. I've become very close to him since he rescued us, but nothing inappropriate. I admit I wanted more, but until recently he still thought he was married, though his wife seemed to think otherwise. Linda raged, muttering low, rude comments to her lawyer, threatening to drown out the courtroom. The judge struck the gavel once and warned Mr. Schultz to calm his client. Linda sat down, still muttering. Emma continued, I was willing to wait for James to recover. This step regarding his children is crucial for his healing. He is a good man and I hope this works out for him. I will wait for him. Silence. Then she said, I love him, Your Honor. The judge raised an eyebrow and the room quieted. He cleared his throat. Thank you, Mrs. Lindell. The court appreciates your testimony. Linda screamed, No, and ran towards the exit. The judge ordered the bailiff to detain her, but she was already gone. Her lawyer asked for a break to talk to his client. The judge announced a 2-hour lunch break and the session would resume at 2 p.m. Everyone stand, the bailiff announced. The judge left, shaking his head. I turned to Emma. So, you love me? I think it's mutual. She was trembling. What? She muttered. Come on, you know I love you too. She smiled, blushing. Well, now I'm sure. I took her hands and kissed her lightly. Our friends and family smiled and laughed at our display. We headed to a steakhouse for lunch. My lawyers were in high spirits, especially Angie, who was pleased with her performance. LV told her that if she ever got tired of Maryland, she could join his firm. At 1:45, we returned to court to find the defense team in chaos. Linda had disappeared. The judge issued a warrant for her arrest, but the defense presented signed documents where she agreed to my claim and waived all parental rights. I was stunned. When LV and Angie told me the implications, LV said, "None, son. You won. She gave you everything. You're already divorced. That's all." Angie put her hand on my shoulder. "It's over, Jim. Accept it and go. You don't have to run." She asked for nothing. It was all over. I won. But at what cost? I still had to pick up my kids from school. They were unaware of the situation, but that would soon change. 2 reporters, one from the Cicero newspaper and one from the Chicago Sun-Times, tried to talk to my ex-wife but couldn't due to her disappearance. LV told them we'd make a statement after reviewing the documents. It'll take them a day or 2. Hopefully, something else will come up and we won't be news anymore, he laughed. We went to pick up the kids. Emma, now 12, and Tommy, 9, ran out of the school, saw their grandparents, and then me with a woman they didn't recognize. They froze, then exploded with joy. "Daddy! Daddy!" They rushed to me, hugging and kissing. "We missed you. Where were you? Why didn't you call? What happened? Why was Mom so angry? Where is Mom?" They hadn't been told anything. Interesting. I hugged them while Emma Lindell stood aside. I pointed to her. "Kids, this is Mrs. Lindell. She's a good friend of mine. Let's go home with your grandparents, meet some friends, and have lunch." They agreed and grabbed their backpacks. We went to their grandparents' house and the kids joined the backyard party. Then came the hard part. After everyone ate and the kids were told they'd miss school tomorrow, we retired to the yard for serious conversations. With 3 grandparents, LV, Angie, and Emma Lindell, I explained to the children that their mother had left. We didn't know where, but she left us all. They were a bit angry but seemed accustomed to her disappearing. This was one reason their grandparents had filed for custody when Linda started acting erratically. They lived a full life with their grandparents who provided stability while my mom spent a lot of time there too. So here's the deal, kids. I went to court for custody and your grandparents support it. I won and your mom agreed. You have a choice. Move with me or stay with your grandparents. It's up to you. I'll answer your questions when you're ready, but some things may be hard to understand right now, I said. My daughter spoke first. She cheated on you, didn't she, Dad? Different men every few weeks. It was gross. Tommy added. That Mark was the worst. It was hard not to sympathize with them. Silence filled the air as Emma Lindell squeezed my hand. Tommy asked, "Is she your friend?" I blushed and replied, "Yes." Emma stumbled. Then little Emma laughed and said, "Oh yeah, she's definitely his friend." "My name is Emma too," she said, looking at my friend. "Emmeline," answered Big Emma. "But my friends call me Emma." "I like it," little Emma said. "My real name is Emily, but I like Emma too." My son watched carefully. He turned to me and said, "I think she's suitable, Dad. What do you think?" "I think so too, son," I replied. We discussed many things over the next 2 days. I explained to my in-laws and my mom about the house I built, the offer for them to sell their houses and move to Maryland. The kids were excited about moving, especially when they learned their grandparents would too. The older folks liked the idea, needing a change of scenery. We organized everything after Linda disappeared. LV helped my mom with her house sale. She had a garage sale, donated stuff to charity, and packed the rest. My in-laws put their house up for sale, did the same with their belongings, rented a truck and packed it up. The kids finished school and we got all the paperwork to move to Maryland. I stayed to help. We drove back with the kids and my father-in-law in one car and my mom and me in the truck. After one night in motels, we arrived in Golden Beach. Camilla arranged for therapists at the school, but the kids seemed okay. We showed everyone our new house. My father-in-law's place was a 5-minute walk away. After touring the house and picking bedrooms, we went to see their new place. Mai and Camilla gave us a tour and handed us the keys. They loved it. While everyone got acquainted, I walked back to my house where Emma and Linda were talking on the porch. My daughter met me with a withering gaze. "So, will I have another sister besides the new mom?" she asked. Yeah, I guess. Didn't I mention that?" She laughed and hugged me. Tommy said now he understood why there were so many bedrooms, but he avoided my eyes. "We need to keep an eye on him. We unloaded my in-laws' things, then my mom's items that had arrived a few days earlier. I thanked everyone, treated them to dinner at Sally's, and checked my bank account. It was time to get back to work. Life resumed with two young people adjusting to new surroundings. Linda fit in quickly and our family adapted. Tommy and I grew closer, bonding over our us versus them dynamic. The kids did well in school and would start the next school year on track. Emma and I married in mid-August in a small ceremony and honeymooned in New Orleans. I was rebuilding my business, but we mostly enjoyed the hotel room and restaurants, unaffected by the weather. Linda, no news. With the help of friends, family, and a loving new wife, I rebuilt my life. I'm happy. Did I make the right choice years ago? Maybe. I think I made the only choice possible. I'm lucky, that's for sure.